Welcome back, everyone, to the Wedge 52 Gridiron Podcast. I'm your host, Wedge. Today's episode is the 10-minute report, Ravens. I'm sure this is the most highly anticipated 10-minute report that you all have been waiting for, just as I have been waiting to complete. Before we jump in, please make sure you follow me right here on Spotify, as well as check out my Instagram at Wedge52Gridiron. Following both of these, you'll be able to see when my newest podcast and Instagram posts drop and be able to keep up with what is happening on the Wedge 52 Gridiron channel. With that being said, let's jump into the 10-minute report. You guys should all know how it works by now. And 20 minutes of study plus my already established knowledge to create a 10-minute podcast. With that being said, let's jump into today's and start off with Todd Monken, new offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens. He's most recently was the Georgia offensive coordinator for the past couple of years, where that Georgia offense was very dominant and helped lead them to back-to-back national championships. Before that, Monken has experience being the Browns offensive coordinator, where he coached Odell Beckham Jr., one of the free agent acquisitions of the Baltimore Ravens this offseason, as well as experience in Tampa Bay as the Bucs offensive coordinator before then. Lamar Jackson was the talk of the town, was the talk of the NFL nation for several months, up until his deal got done, where ultimately he ended up completing a deal with the Ravens worth 5 years and $260 million, an average salary of $52 million a year. Shout out to our boy Ray Lewis. Not sure if that was intentional. I'm going to believe it was. Last year, Lamar Jackson only played 12 games before he went down with an injury, where he had 2,242 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions on 62.3% completion percentage, as well as 764 yards rushing and 3 rushing touchdowns. Well, obviously not the most productive year for Lamar Jackson, but still had some incredible plays, some incredible, athleticism, behind the line of scrimmage, just getting out of sacks, extending plays. Lamar doing his thing. He definitely is a huge impact on the Baltimore Ravens that I do not have time to jump into all of the details in the 10-minute report. But Lamar Jackson is critical to the Ravens offense and the Ravens team. So definitely a deal needed to be done. And we are glad to have him. In the backfield, J.K. Dobbins' situation is unknown right now, whether he's holding out or not. He's listed on the injury list, but he's been having some contract disputes and wanting to get a deal done. Last season, Dobbins had 520 yards and 2 touchdowns in 8 games. The thing with Dobbins is his health. In 3 seasons, he's only played 23 games. He missed the entirety of the 2021 season. And in his career, he has 1,325 rushing yards and 11 touchdowns. So yes, while he is, productive in those few games he's played, it's definitely not, towards the top end of production, definitely not into the highest level of running backs and, their market and contract feuds that we've been seeing. So we'll see what happens with JK. But we also have Gus Edwards, 433 yards and 3 touchdowns last year in 9 games. He also dealt with an injury. And then we just signed Melvin Gordon, who had 318 yards and 2 touchdowns in 10 games versus Denver last year. It's definitely going to be interesting to see which of our Baltimore Ravens running backs, kind of takes that primary role in the 2023 season. Moving out to the other weapons, of course, Mark Andrews, top 3 tight end in the league. Last year, he had 847 yards and 5 touchdowns. This was considered a down year for Mark Andrews, who, quite frankly, was probably getting doubled even more, by having a lack of other weapons, fellow weapons. This was the first year without Hollywood. Bateman got hurt, so Andrews was experiencing a lot of double teams, a lot of attention from the defense, and was still able to put up 847 and 5 in a down year. Expect things to really open up for Andrews again this year with the new offensive weapons, as well as a healthy Rashad Bateman. Hopefully, Bateman can stay healthy this season and, live up to some of the potential of his high draft selection. Last year, in 6 games, he had 285 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Devin Duvernay had 407 yards and 3 touchdowns last year from the wide receiver position, as well as Duvernay really provides a spark as the Ravens punt and kickoff returner. Now to talk about some of the 2 most exciting pickups from the Ravens this offseason. Of course, the first one I'm talking about is the signing of Odell Beckham Jr. Odell Beckham did not play last season as he was recovering. I do think he could have played towards the end of the season with all the interest that he was garnering. And I think he ultimately just ended up deciding to wait and get that full year rather than trying to push it and, potentially injure it again. So Odell Beckham looks incredible through the training camp clips that have been posted thus far. And he's certainly exciting to watch, bringing a lot of excitement to myself, and I'm sure many other Ravens fans about his potential in our offense. In his career, through 9 seasons playing, he has 7,367 yards and 56 touchdowns. And then the Ravens went ahead and drafted Zay Flowers out of Boston College in the first round of the draft, the same day as the Lamar Jackson contract extension. Check out my Lamar contract extension and Zay Flowers draft podcast episode. I believe it was episode 1 of the Wedge 52 Gridiron podcast here. Zay Flowers had just over 3,000 yards and 29 touchdowns in 4 years at Boston College. Incredibly explosive. His routes and his breaks have been looking really good, as well as his ability to play outside, which many people forget that that's primarily what he did in college. So we're going to see how Monken uses all of his new toys, his new weapons, Lamar Jackson, in his offense that he's implementing. And the Ravens also have free agent signing Nelson Aguilar, Isaiah Likely, who's been on the roster, may have an increased role. So it's a lot of things looking up for the Ravens offense, as well as they have a top 5 offensive line in Stanley at left tackle. Looks like Saleh, the 6th round pick from the Ravens, may be starting at left guard even from week 1. If not, I'd project it's going to be Ben Cleveland. Tyler Linderbaum, Kevin Zittler, and Morgan Moses round out the rest. Top 5 offensive line should be this year, hopefully, a healthy full season from Ronnie Stanley. Last year, their offense was 2nd in yards per rush and 3rd in rushing yards per game. Although our offensive schemes and percentages may change from run versus pass, do expect the yards per carry and efficiency of the run game to still be very high. Moving on to the defense, even though we are already very deep in our 10-minute report, that is what happens when it is about the Ravens. Last year, the defense was incredible. 3rd in points per game allowed, 6th in yards per game allowed, 2nd in touchdowns allowed per game, and 4th in opponent red zone touchdown percentage allowed. The defense has a lot of Very good pieces, as well as a couple question marks still. Those question marks are edge rush situation, as well as cornerback depth situation. A couple pieces that could fill in those spots, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Ravens sign someone yet before the season starts from either of those position groups. Starting with the defensive line, Justin Matabuke had 42 tackles, 5.5 sacks, and 8 tackles for a loss last season. And then on the edges, we have Odafe Owe, who last year had 43 tackles, 3 sacks, 7 tackles for a loss, and a very critical forced fumble against the Chiefs to help us win the game. And then Tyus Bowser should hopefully be healthy for a full season this year and return back to his form. And then kind of also in that mix for the edge spot, like I was saying, 86 overall draft pick Trenton Simpson out of Clemson, as well as the Ravens draft pick Tavius Robinson out of Ole Miss. In the middle of the box, potentially one of the best linebacker duos in the league. Roquan Smith, certainly top 3, top 2, maybe top 1. Middle linebackers, Roquan Smith, 169 tackles, 11 tackles for a loss, 4.5 sacks, 3 interceptions, and 6 passes defense last year for Mr. Roquan Smith, who we acquired mid-season last year for a second-round pick. Roquan Smith was a first-team All-Pro member last season. I'm not sure the probability of a second-rounder being a first-team All-Pro. I would say we won that trade. Roquan then signed an extension with the Ravens, 4 years, $80 million, I believe. And then alongside him, Patrick Queen, who struggled at times throughout his career, but really flourished, before even Roquan got there, moving over to that off-ball linebacker position. And then especially with Roquan there, Queen really stepped it up even more and played very, very good. Queen last year had 117 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 6 passes defense, and 2 interceptions. And then cornerback 1 is for sure Marlon Humphrey. Last year had 71 tackles, 3 interceptions, and 7 passes defensed. And then the other cornerbacks, kind of our second, I would say this might be our first biggest question mark or concern to address right now. It's a cornerback depth, specifically that 2-3-4 corner spot. But we signed free agent Rock Ya-Sin. We have Brandon Steffens, who's played good. And then we also have free agent signing Trayvon Mullen. And then we drafted Caillou Blue Kelly in the 5th round out of Stanford, who actually had a pretty good career in college. So hopefully those 2 or 3 of those guys can really step up and be a solid starter at the cornerback position. And then at the safety position, Kyle Hamilton, last year as a rookie, had a very good year, especially the second half of the season. He kind of moved out of the traditional safety role and kind of was in the more free-roaming safety position, different alignments, different inside, outside, playing in the box, playing over the top, all of that. Kyle Hamilton ended the season with 62 tackles, 5 passes defense, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble. So I would not be surprised at all to see Kyle Hamilton, improve even off of last year, especially if he's going to be moving around all over the field again. I think that benefits his size and athleticism. And then we have Marcus Williams, who should be healthy, ready to go for this season here. Last year, Marcus Williams had 61 tackles, 4 interceptions, and 8 passes defense in just 10 games. I believe Williams was on pace to try and tie or secure the league leading interceptions last season. So it'll be exciting to see him back healthy, ready to go. And then, of course, the only kicker I think I've mentioned throughout the entire 10-minute report series. The Ravens do have the GOAT, Justin Tucker, who has many clutch field goals, many game winners, highest field goal percentage in NFL history, as well as the longest field goal in NFL history, 66 yards against Detroit last season. So we did go, well over the 10-minute report, but it's what happens with the Baltimore Ravens episode. If you guys would like to hear about the Ravens draft picks in depth more for each of them, check out my episode I did on the Ravens draft class back in April. Other than that, that leaves me with just my record prediction for the 2023 Baltimore Ravens, where I predict they will go 14-3. Thank you all for listening. If you made it this far, please follow me right here on Spotify, rate the podcast, follow the Instagram at Wedge52Gridiron, and go Ravens.